What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the UI Buzz podcast slash vlogcast. Yeah, this one. Let's talk about some WordPress. Now, here's the deal, right? Here's how I got to be where I'm talking about this. So, as many of you know, if you've ever visited mypeterwitham.com, my hub on the web, you would know or notice that it's WordPress based. Now, let's talk about why it's WordPress based, first of all, because I want to address the thing that comes up a lot, which is, but you know how to make websites, why didn't you make your own? Okay, good question. I always give the same answer. Because at the end of the day, it's about putting content out there. And I can build my own website, sure. Or I can just take advantage of other tools that have already invented the wheel for me and focus on what I really want to do at the end of the day when I get home from my day job, which is put content out. And WordPress, like so many other things, yes, they're not perfect, but they do the job. And I can focus on the content and I can put it out. So that's why I do that. I don't have to build something just because I can. But hey, that's where I'm at. And if you think otherwise, great. Let's talk about that. Anyway, yes, it's WordPress based. I love WordPress for being able to put content out quickly. And for all of the conveniences it affords for me. Plugins to do things, themes, all these things that I can tweak and do what I want them to do. But it takes a lot of the heartache out of things for me and I can just do them quickly. Put a post out, there's a plugin that pushes it to social media, whatever. Other things like just the convenience of the content, tracking clicks with like pretty links. Shout out to pretty links. Love that plugin. And things like that. Now, yes, again, I can do these any other ways, many other ways, but it's convenience. However, and you knew this part was coming, WordPress, yeah, it is definitely something that has problems. Firstly, not a big PHP fan. Don't flame me. It's just not something I care to particularly write. So there's that. But also, it's vulnerable to attacks. There's a lot of complexity in there. The WordPress and Automatic and everybody else does a great job, but it's vulnerable to attacks and pretty easily if you don't lock it down and things like that. Yes, you have to then install plugins to deal with this kind of stuff. And then that's the other part. Plugins, themes, all these things. Rendering if you don't have some caching, even if you have caching. All of these things slow down the performance, right? Forget stability, they slow down performance. And performance is everything these days, especially since a lot of people hit things up on mobile devices, things like that. Basically not big trunks of, high bandwidth internet or whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. So you have to care about these things. Now, I'm thankful that my site does pretty good, really good most of the time, on all the relevant, score checking things for connectivity and everything else. However, what lets it down is DNS, right? You're at the mercy, in my case, at the mercy of the hosting and DNS and everything else. So it's that initial load and connection to the site that's the problem. Once you get there, it's nice and fast. But if it takes a few seconds to get there, you've lost the people. Simple as that. And it's frustrating because even when I try and pull up the admin panel, oh my gosh, it takes forever. And then when I get there, great, I'm finally there. These are all things that bug me about WordPress. But perhaps the more accurate thing here is it's WordPress hosting. Now, I use a popular hosting company. I'll name them because they're really good most of the time, Bluehost. And I'm mostly happy with them. So shout out to them. They are one of the best ones I have used, and I've used a few. So I want to recognize that when they're good, they're good as far as I'm concerned. So shout out to them. So I'm not blasting them here or anything like that. But it's the comment is to say that WordPress hosting sites are essentially dime a dozen at this point, I guess I would say. And part of that means sometimes they're reseller accounts or something like that, and they're not always great. Your experience may vary. But also the other problem there is invariably you are on the server with a bunch of other folks who may not be doing all the best things you do for performance and caring about things like that. So when their site slows down, yeah, we know this, it brings yours down too. And that's the problem. And that's the problem that's bugging me again. It's like everything. You name the service, your ISP, your cable company, your satellite company, whatever it is. There's good periods and there's bad periods. And I just get tired of these cycles and not wondering which one is it going to be today or for the next few hours. And my issues with WordPress hosting, right? Now, my other site, compileswift.com, is hosted on Netlify, and I want to say I love Netlify, but it's a static site generator. This is what I use. So it's all HTML and CSS and so on. It is always fantastically fast. It's brilliant. And I can push markdown files out for my content. It rebuilds it quickly and it's up and going again. So it's great. But because it's a static site, that comes with problems too, right? It is not so easy to do some of the things. Like, for example, let's say if you're one of those folks that uses a WordPress plugin for putting up a contact form, that's not so bad on Netlify. It's actually pretty easy. But maybe you've got one for tracking something or another, whatever it may be. Then if it becomes something that's server-side rendered and things like that, you're now back into the world of complexity. But it's nowhere near as complex as WordPress. Let's get there. But it adds a level of complication. But when it comes to just delivering super fast sites, hosting a site, a static site, okay, flame me if you like, is always going to be quicker. At least in my experience, it's always been quicker. And honestly, these days, there are so many good frameworks out there to use, and even hosted sites and everything else, that it really should be an option people think about. I use Astro. Shout out to them. What a beautiful product. I use Astro because it just does everything. And also, perhaps more importantly, when I run it locally during development, I see exactly what's going up on the web, and that matters too. Yes, you can host your WordPress site locally using many different tools. I used to use MAMP and love that, and it's fantastic. So shout out to them. But sometimes you don't quite see locally what you're going to get remotely. With a static site generator is what you get for the most part. Again, unless you're using a server-side something. But all of this removes the complications of me having to be a web developer and allows me to be a web content maker, which is what I care about the most. If I'm building a website for somebody or something like that, yes, I put a different hat on. But when it comes to putting out content like my podcast or my vlogs or my blog posts, I just want to get it out there. I want to focus on making good content and not spend the next 10 hours working on whatever to get that content up on a website somewhere. So I want to put this out there. I love WordPress. But for me, it is a love-hate, how's it going today kind of scenario. And every so often you go through these cycles of really, again, and like I say, I realized that it's not so much WordPress itself, it's where and how it's being hosted. And if you are using any kind of service, it doesn't even have to be WordPress. As soon as you're on a shared instance with other people, I guess to use a bad analogy, getting on a bus. If you get on a bus with hardly anybody on it, there's not much of a chance you're going to get sick. If you get on a bus with a whole bunch of people sneezing and whatever, coughing, you might get sick, right? Shared hosting is like that. Actually, it's not a bad analogy at all. And if you're someone who's really serious about putting stuff out there for folks and really wanting to make a good experience more than anything for people, more and more, I gotta say, shared hosting is not it. Simple as that. And I've started to turn more and more to some static hosted site somewhere and make the parts dynamic that you have to. Because things like Netlify and things like that, they just never seem to slow down. At least for me in my experience. Again, I'm going to put it there like that in all these years that I've used them at this point. So I want to put that out there as kind of a developer note vlog to say, this is how my week's going, how's yours? But also to address some things that people may be thinking, oh, dang it, WordPress, but maybe it's not WordPress. Maybe it's the hosting that's the problem. So right? Things like that. You got to look into all these factors, okay? So that's what I wanted to put out there on the episode this week. If you have any thoughts on this or anything at all, you can go to uibuzz.com where this podcast is, or you can reach out to me at peterweedham.com, at uibuzz on Twitter, things like that. If you have some thoughts on this or some tips or whatever it may be and you want to talk about it, please, you're more than welcome. I love to talk about this stuff with folks and give other people's perspectives because, hey, nothing says mine's the right one. Nothing says I got this right. And there's nothing better than hearing perspectives from other people to make you think different about stuff. So that's it, folks. Hope you're having a great week. I'll see you in the next one.